Hi everyone, this is Dr. Kristin Rodier from Student Success Services, aka the Writing Center. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about an argument, what it is, how to build it, and hopefully that as a tool will help you in your writing, making strong arguments in your writing specifically. Sometimes it's good to start with the difference between an inference and an argument. So if I sort of walked into a room with a wet umbrella, what would you infer? I'm shaking off my umbrella, I'm closing it up. What would you infer from that? Probably that it was raining outside, right? So you would have like an immediate inference. That would be that chain of reasoning that happens in your mind, consciously, subconsciously, whatever. But it's sort of, we're always drawing conclusions. We're constantly drawing conclusions based on evidence in our world. But of course, we've been wrong before. So what if I said, how do you know that it's raining? Like, do you really know that it's raining just from the presence of my umbrella? Or is it just likely, right? And so if I was going to ask you to explain how you know it's raining, you would have to make an argument. You would have to say, here's the evidence, therefore it is raining outside. So you would need to, what I mean by making public is that you take that unconscious inference that you have in your mind, you add evidence that's acceptable to others, you verify things, and then you logically connect those ideas in a way that other people, that's what I mean by public, other people would also have to accept your conclusion. Okay? So it's about adding evidence, connecting the dots, and making that inference more robust by testing it. And so why talk about this? Because an essay, which we're often writing essays or just any kind of paper that makes an argument, has a thesis, is a sustained argument to establish a thesis. So your conclusion is kind of this bigger notion that you're trying to argue for, whether it's an interpretation or a way of understanding a particular topic, whatever. The essay is a sustained argument. So you're laying out thinking for others in ways that build a case, that sort of try to prove something. What is an argument? I love this example from Monty Python. You should watch the video if you haven't seen it. What is an argument? An argument is a collected series of statements intended to establish a proposition. A proposition being a fancy word for assertion or claim. This is a definition that comes straight from the Argument Clinic video. I think it's absolutely accurate, right? It puts together a bunch of statements, and not just for fun or not just as a list, but those statements are meant to prove something. They build a case to establish a given proposition, whether that's a thesis or a claim or a scientific hypothesis, whatever it might be. Arguments then must have appeal. Okay, here's an argument. Premise 1, the condo board controls your money. Probably true, right? In this, let's imagine it's true in this case. Premise 2, you should know what happens to your money. Probably, right? Another pretty good premise. Conclusion, therefore you should be on the condo board. Whoa, I don't know. Should I be on the condo board? What if I don't care about money? Or what if I don't have time to be on the condo board, right? Does this argument appeal to someone who has tons of money and doesn't care who controls it in this small way, right? The appeal has to be to anyone whatsoever, not just someone who, you know, shares a certain set of values. You'd have to share a certain set of values for this argument to have appeal for you. Okay, so let's take a peek at different parts of an argument. You've already seen them in what I've just been talking about, but let's get them all laid out. Premises, right? Premises are these support statements. They build to a larger argument. Sometimes premises themselves, when they build to a larger argument, are kind of sub-arguments. So if you think of your essay as being a collection of sub-arguments where the greater argument is your thesis, in a way, each one of those sub-arguments is a premise for your larger conclusion. So really all that really matters in this premise-conclusion difference is the support relationship. So what is supporting what? Okay, premises support a conclusion. Now, sometimes arguments go wrong because the premises are irrelevant to the conclusion, or they go wrong because the premises don't support the conclusion, or they go wrong because they're just, the conclusion is used itself as a premise, and a conclusion can't support itself. That's what circular logic is. So what happens here is you have this logical relationship of if the premises, then the conclusion. Most arguments fail either because their premises are false or the support relationship doesn't hold. So really paying attention to that logical glue that holds the premises and the conclusion together. That's what I mean by a support relationship. So let's look at an example of an argument. This is taken from an LSAT test. The amount of electricity consumed in Millville on any day in August is directly proportional to peak humidity on that day. Since the average peak humidity this August was 3 points higher than average peak humidity last August, it follows that more energy was consumed in Millville this August than last August. So what you have here is a kind of proportional argument. It says, here's this thing, it's proportional, here's a new instance of it, the proportion relationship should hold, therefore, there's this much energy that's being consumed in Millville. What's the conclusion? How do you know something is the conclusion? How do you find it? You take a peek here, right? We have some logical language here that indicates it follows that, right? But keep in mind that it's the conclusion because of the logic, not because of the words. Sometimes students will use thus and therefore, or anybody will use thus and therefore in their writing and think it signals a conclusion when it doesn't. So it doesn't, by its very, just using those words doesn't necessarily give you a conclusion. There has to be logic there. So let's lay this out in premise 1, premise 2. The amount of electricity consumed in Millville on any day in August is directly proportional to peak humidity on that day. We have a principle here. The average peak humidity this particular August was 3 points higher than average peak humidity last August instance. So looks like we're going to take the principle, combine it with an instance, and get a conclusion. Therefore, more energy was consumed in Millville this August than last August. Now, what would it be like if I said to you that the average peak humidity this August was 3 points higher than average peak humidity last August? If that was the conclusion. Well, then what would we do with this statement here? More energy was consumed than this August than last August. Why would we just talk about electricity and humidity and then just only talk about humidity? Right? The other thing is that I want to show here is another argument with the exact same logical structure. Okay? Sometimes it's good to see it really shows you that logical glue that holds the propositions together if you can look at examples that have the same logic. So look at this argument. The amount of art supplies used in any of the Aesthetics Institute's 25 classes is directly proportional to the number of students in that class. See, this example speaks to me better. I can make better sense of art supplies being proportional to the number of students. Since in these classes the Institute enrolled 20% more students overall last year than in the previous year, more art supplies were used in the Institute's classes last year than in the previous year. Now look, we don't have it follows that, we have since. Okay, that's our logical indicator, right? But here the premise and the conclusion are kind of glued together a little bit. Let's see. There we go. There's our conclusion, right? They're just connected in the same sentence. Therefore, more art supplies were used in the Institute's classes last year than in the previous year. Boom. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed learning about arguments. And come down to the Writing Center, check out some of our other videos if you want help building arguments in your papers.